Hey everyone, it's Kim from Dream Build Academy. We're here today with video number 2. I am fully embracing where I am in this process and we are at the beginning. But I think today's video is an absolute must watch. You're going to get the benefit of a framework and a system that it took me 25 plus years to design and perfect. And you can start using it today. I have 3 goals for you in this video. Goal number 1 is that I want to help accelerate your learning curve. You're going to take years off the process when you see this structure. Number 2, I want you to get a sense of the milestones that are on your journey. Consider this kind of a roadmap. We have a lot of learning to do, but this is a basic roadmap and it's going to show you those key milestones. And goal number 3 is I want you to be able to adjust and regroup based on what you're hearing today. I don't know how far down the road you are, but this is a chance to hear some new things and possibly adjust your strategy. So today, I'm going to share with you my 7-step framework for managing your dream build. This is the framework that I live by. It's the system that I use every time I sit down and start to work on a dream home. This is not a deep dive. I'm going to give you the high level of what we're doing. There's a lot we're going to cover together. Take a second, go grab a notebook, a pen, whatever you need to take some notes, and here we go. Step number 1 is visualizing. I'm often surprised at how difficult it is for my clients to describe to me what they visualize for their new home. And then I'll nudge them a little bit and they'll push back and they'll say, but Kim, you're the designer, you tell me. Well, yes and no. Yes, I am the designer. And yes, I will bring my professional expertise and even my design influence. But the bottom line is that I can't do anything until my client has clarity around what they want. And visualizing is part of that process of developing clarity. Without visualizing and going through that process, it's impossible to get clarity. And without clarity, you're just going to stumble through the process of trying to build your dream home. I have the tools, the semantics, the experiences to be able to do this. And still, at the beginning of each project, whether it's a development deal or if it's a project that I'm doing with a client, I do not skip this step. Each home tells a story, and you must understand what your story is. And once you get it, you're still not done. Next, you need enrollment in your vision. Level 1 enrollment, in my mind, is the enrollment that you get with your spouse or your partner, or maybe it's your immediate family members. This is why a lot of couples end up divorced after a major build or a remodel. They don't have a clear and shared vision, so they end up fighting, and the project stalls. So after you get level 1 enrollment, which is a shared vision, then you need to go for a level 2 enrollment. Level 2 enrollment is what you need to take to your professionals, the dream team that you're going to hire and put together to work on your project. I've just done this long enough now to know that I will not move forward until we have that kind of clarity. So even if I'm working on a development deal and I've got investors, or if I'm working with a client, either way, we have to have clarity of vision. And when I look back over my career, the projects where we had a shared vision at every level, level 1 and level 2 enrollment, those are the projects that were unbelievably successful. Step number 2, preparing. There is so much preparation that's required before you even start a dream build. I really break this down into 2 areas. The first being finances. And believe it or not, a lot of couples that I start to work with have done a lot of preparation on the financial side. The biggest void I see in the financial preparation that they've done is that they've failed to plan for the cash flow. And when the cash stops flowing, the job stops going. And then you get what you call job stall or job fatigue. And when that sets in, it's really difficult to get momentum back on your project. So this site's going to be dedicated to helping you with this financial preparation and giving you real meaningful information that you can act on. But then there's also life preparation. People respond really differently to change. There's probably somebody in your family that's practically a gypsy. You could throw anything at them at any time. They're totally spontaneous. And if the world goes up in smoke, they're barely affected. And then you've got somebody else in your family that has a hard time if there's any disruption to their schedule, their routine, where things are. These dynamics exist. They're real dynamics that have to be managed and prepared for. And so this is what I talk about with life preparation. I've also found that at the beginning of a project, going through the process of purging is vitally important. You do not want to carry what no longer serves you to your new dream home. Step number 3. Budgeting. This is a really big bucket and it's a source of great confusion and angst. In my opinion, the entire premise associated with budgeting for a project is flawed. You're trying to get tangible pricing on something that hasn't been designed yet. The best you can hope for is to get ideas of costs. There's a long list of drivers that are specific to your property, your location, and the time that you're actually building. For instance, I'm going to give you a short list of the cost drivers. This is just a few. I can't get into all of them in this video. Land price. costs. The underlying cost of your land drives your all-in costs of your project. If you're in the middle of Montana versus the beach in Northern California, two entirely different things. Location is a big one. Are you in an expensive zip code? If you are, that's going to be a huge driver of costs. The slope of your property. Building on a hillside can 2x to 10x your costs. Entitlements. Is your HOA a joy to deal with? I've seen people reduced to tears in lawsuits by their HOAs. Another factor dealing with entitlements is just the current state of your building department. Is your city quick to issue building permits? Or are they bogged down because they've had a great influx in building permit requests? Finish level. If you're wanting slab on your walls and your floors, that's going to be a much different consideration than doing 12-inch square tile throughout your whole house. So we have to be realistic on your finish. Local labor costs fluctuate greatly. In times like this, where there's been a migration pattern across the country, some of the lesser populated areas are becoming increasingly populated. Those demands drive up the labor costs and they create labor shortages. And have you ever tried to Google this information? I have. I'm in the business and I've tried to Google it. And the information you get out there is woefully inadequate. But Kim, I need to know my budget before I begin. Absolutely, you do. You also need to be able to take those preliminary bids you get and look at them apples to apples. This is where I see a lot of people get into trouble because they'll get preliminary bids from 2 or 3 general contractors, and it's not that their numbers are so far off, it's just that there's giant pieces of information that have been left out. So you need a way to evaluate those bids that are coming in on an apples to apples basis. At Dream Build Academy, we're going to show you how you can predict some of this information and make sense out of all the uncertainty. The result, you're going to be much better prepared. Step number 4, selecting. I've kind of divided selecting into 2 categories also. The first part of selecting is selecting your dream team. You're going to have an internal team and you're going to have an external team. The internal team is what I call your trusted advisors. Consider them who you would give power of attorney to. They're making decisions on your behalf and they're acting for you. And this is done because it's unrealistic that you're going to have the time to manage every aspect of this project, and you're going to need responsible people that are acting on your behalf under your direction. Remember, you're the CEO of the project. Let me give you just some examples of who would be your internal team. First, you'd start with your attorneys. You're probably going to need a real estate attorney, a construction attorney. They are different. Sometimes they share the same expertise, but they are different. You might need a tax attorney and you might need an estate planning attorney. Then you're going to have your professional team. And it's not that these people aren't acting on your behalf. They're just in a slightly different capacity. They are your professionals. So this is the classic case of first you're going to hire your architect and your interior designer. You'll have your landscape architect. And then you're going to have a cadre of engineers, probably a civil, a soils, a structural. You might even hire a mechanical engineer at some point. You're going to have your surveyor, and then of course your general contractor. The second part of phase 4 has to do again with selecting, but this is about selecting your FF&E. And if that's an unfamiliar term to you, it just means your furniture, your fixtures, and your equipment. Now you might be thinking, well, isn't that part of designing? Don't we do that later? Well, yes and no. The reason I bring it up as being a very important part of the process is that you cannot underestimate how many decisions you're going to have to make during this dream build. You are going to be making thousands of decisions. So mastering the art of selecting and mastering the art of decision making is critical. Mastery in this area ties back to step number 1, which is visualizing. And the more clarity you have around what you want, the easier it is to make decisions and the easier it is to communicate your desires to your professionals so your professionals can make quick decisions for you. The next step is contracting. You're going to have multiple contracts with your professionals and your suppliers, and the bottom line is the contracts have to be written in a way that is mutually beneficial. It's kind of like the process that we went through with selecting. There's going to be a lot of it, and you'll want to make sure that you're efficient in doing it or that you have the right professionals to help you. Each of your suppliers and professionals is going to have their own industry standard type of fee arrangements and contracts. All of that process just needs to be managed efficiently and simplified. If your general contractor isn't collecting the proper paperwork from his subs and collecting the lien releases and waivers and keeping on top of the insurance, you could be left holding the bag. So I strongly advise you to retain a very good construction contracts attorney to help you through this. I don't want you to be overwhelmed. Contracting is also about setting up your purchasing processes. Just like selecting, there are thousands of items that need to be purchased. Now, your professionals are going to do some of the purchasing for you, but you have to have the right procedures in place so you know exactly what you're getting, you know what you're paying for. There's just so much that goes into it. If you have a lender, our construction loan, then the lender's going to have their own protocols. And if you are not managing the paperwork processing correctly for all your loan draws, that's another thing that's going to bring the job to a screeching halt. Step number 6. Designing. The design phase is when that initial spark of an idea that you have gets married with what you did in the visualization process, and it all starts to come to life. Here's the thing about design that's really important to know. Your design professionals, your architect, your interior designer, and your landscape architect, they need to start working at the same time. It's not a linear progression. When I first got into this business, there was often a handoff. It would start with the architect, then it would go to the interior designer, then it'd go to the landscape designer, back to the architect. There was no cohesion. You'll be amazed when you can get these 3 trades in a room or these 3 professionals in a room together to see what they can come up with and create that sense of collaboration and teamwork. It's amazing. Another thing that I'm completely adamant about is that with these 3 trades, you pick an architect, an interior designer, and a landscape designer that work entirely in 3D. We are so far beyond the days of hand sketching and watercolor renderings that you hang up on your wall eventually. It is amazing what we can do. You will feel like you're inside your home. As we deep dive more into this area and I share some of the projects that we've done and I talk to you about the technology and the software and we talk to different professionals who are doing this also, you'll start to understand exactly what you need to look for when you're evaluating your professionals and making your selection. And here we are at the final step. Step number 7. Building. So getting the right general contractor is half the battle, but there's a lot more to do. And I understand building can be kind of overwhelming. You're probably sitting there thinking, I've never done construction before. How am I going to manage this? Have you ever heard the old saying, what gets measured gets done? Well, this really applies to construction. My husband's a developer. And for years, I've been listening to him in the construction trailer talking about schedule, budget, schedule, budget, schedule, budget. And if you keep track of those 2 things and you know what you're looking for, you can make sure your construction is on track. Now, realistically, it's not just schedule and budget. There's also quality. You might be thinking, how am I going to know what's a good job and what's not a good job? With the training that we'll have on this site, you're going to get much more familiar. We're going to show you what's happening on job sites. We'll talk about certain installation techniques and things like that. You don't have to know it all. You just have to know some things to look for. And lastly, there are tools. This is just like what I was talking about where your architect and your interior designer and your landscaper should all be working in 3D. Well, the same thing is happening in the world of construction management. The software tools are so sophisticated now. We don't have to have the days anymore of 15 binders in the trailer and the contractor taking notes on pieces of paper and shoving them in his pocket. Everything can be done very efficiently. We're going to teach you what to look for. Bottom line is we want you hiring a general contractor that completely embraces the new construction management tools. So that is the high-level overview. The steps are generally sequential, but they're not exclusively sequential. There's going to be times where step 3 might be overlapping with step 4 and step 7 might be overlapping with step 6, but you can use this 7-step framework to organize yourself around managing your construction. Quick review. We had 7 steps. Number 1, visualizing. Number 2, preparing. 3, budgeting. 4, contracting. 5, selecting. 6, designing. And 7, building. The bottom line is your role in this whole process is managing. There's just too much going on. You'll kill yourself if you try to do everything in this building process. Think of yourself as the CEO and start acting like one. One more observation before I sign off. So I don't know if you've ever been in conversation with friends and you just happen to mention we're building our dream home. Well, notice that the action word is building. Building is only 1/7 of it. There is so much that has to be done before you even get to building. And that's why it's important to use a framework like this to help organize yourself and think about how you're going to be approaching things. So I hope you found this video exceptionally helpful. If you did, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel. We're going to have regular posted content. Before you go into the chat and tell me which of these areas, which of the 7 steps do you need to know more about? A little direction from you guys would be most appreciated. There's so much we can talk about. Thanks again for watching and we'll see you soon.